The award-winning Tennessee Wildcast is on the air with the latest on hunting, fishing, boating, wildlife watching, and all things outdoors. Make welcome your host, drummer and outdoor expert novice, Jason Harmon.
All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this edition of Tennessee Wildcast. I'm Jason Harmon. I'm excited about today's show. We are in a lab here at the Nashville Zoo, and we're hanging out with some pretty cool creatures. Clint Borman's one of them. No. True. Clint Borman's going to help me co-host today. He's one of our wildlife habitat biologists. And then we have Geronimo Silva, a private lands biologist, and Sherry Reinch. She's the herpetologist, the lead herpetologist here at the Nashville Zoo. So it's going to be a fun show. We're going to have some cool creatures, at least one cool creature to pull out for you today and introduce you to, and it's going to be a fun show. I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, me too, Jason.
So
thanks for having us.
Thank you all for setting this up and letting us come to the zoo and do this show. Great setup here, and it's going to be fun. So today we're talking about the Hellbender, and it's a really neat creature. We're going to pull one out here and let you see it, talk about it today, and learn about how we can improve habitat for these guys and make life better for them, and so you can see more out there. So first of all, let's learn about the Hellbender. Where can we find them, and what are they?
Okay.
Tell us about it.
So this is a Hellbender. This is actually a 4-year-old animal. You can see they are salamanders, and they are made to live in the water. They're fully aquatic salamanders. They're actually North America's largest salamander. They can actually get up to 2.5 feet long. So this guy is not that long. He's still young. They reach sexual maturity in 6 to 10 years. So he's still got a little ways to go. But you can kind of see he's got some wrinkles on his side here, and that actually increases the surface area of his skin and helps him absorb oxygen. So they don't have to come to the surface and breathe like snakes or turtles or frogs do. They can stand underwater as long as they want. And so these guys are sometimes called snot otters or devil dogs or mud dogs. Water dogs, yeah, that's a common one. We actually don't know where their name Hellbender comes from, so we just call them that. They mostly eat crayfish in the wild, but they also do eat some fish. Okay,
yeah, we were feeding some earlier there, and it's cool to watch them snatch up, what was it, shrimp that we were feeding?
Little shrimp.
And it's pretty awesome to watch them. The coloration, the ones that I've seen in the water seem to be more green, or the spots. Are the spots normal? Is that something?
Yeah, the spots help them blend in a little bit. They are nocturnal, but they do come out during the day sometimes. So the spots seem to just help them blend in. There does seem to be, this is all anecdotal evidence, that there's some coloration depending on what streams they're from. So if you get some from like Pennsylvania, they have a different color versus the ones that we have in Middle Tennessee versus even East Tennessee. So this guy, he's actually from Middle Tennessee, from the Duck River watershed. This seems to be a normal coloration for them. Some of the ones we have are a little bit, they have more yellow to them, and that seems to be also anecdotally from being exposed to more sunlight.
So let's give the Duck River a plug, one of the most diverse rivers in the state.
Yeah, the second most biologically diverse river in the world.
Okay,
in fact.
so he's coming out.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. Tell us. Go ahead.
I was going to say, a lot of people ask us if Hellbenders are lizards or if they're fish or things like that, and I think it's nice to remember that they're salamanders, and then so they'll be together with your frogs and your toads and your other terrestrial salamanders, while your snakes and your lizards will be reptiles. And the main difference is that your reptiles will have the scales and they'll have eyelids, and most of them will be terrestrial, while your salamanders, especially Hellbenders, are fully aquatic, and they're going to be either have that mix of terrestrial and aquatic lifestyle together. So they will actually be within the salamander family, a little bit different than your terrestrial salamanders, the little ones.
Okay. What's their habitat look like for the most part?
Well, they are found in parts of Middle Tennessee and East Tennessee also. So they really like cold, clean rivers. They're mostly found when there's low sediment, because the large ones live under really large rocks, and then the different life stages, the juveniles, the subadults, and the larvae will actually live under different sized rocks. So we need low sediment streams, so there's lots of spaces under the cobble and the gravel for the larva and the juvenile to live.
Are they pretty strong animals? Can they move those rocks around?
They do. At least what I've seen at the zoo is they actually do. They'll move a lot more rocks than I expected around.
Yeah. If you want to see one, you can come to the zoo, right?
We do. We actually have two of the very first Eastern Hellbenders captive born in the country at the Nashville Zoo on exhibit.
Yeah. So that's cool.
Impressive.
Yeah, it is. So, Geronimo, tell us about the status of this animal.
Right. So these, so we have two subspecies under under Hellbenders. So we have the Ozark Hellbenders and the Eastern Hellbenders. So historically, these animals were found in 15 states. They went all the way from southern New York, all the way to the tip of Georgia, all the way up to Illinois, with a separate population up in the Ozark Mountains of Missouri and Arkansas. The animals located in that area, they're the subspecies, the Ozark Hellbenders. The Ozark Hellbenders are federally protected under the Endangered Species Act. What we have here in Tennessee is the Eastern Hellbender. So the Eastern Hellbender right now is considered state endangered, but the Eastern Hellbender here in the Southeast is also a species of concern for other states like North Carolina, Georgia, and Virginia. So it's a joint effort between all of us to kind of tackle Hellbender conservation. So given that status here in Tennessee, Hellbenders will probably stay in the conservation radar for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, for quite a while, I'd say. So, why are people working with this animal? What's their importance, and why are we doing all this work?
Well, obviously because they're super awesome.
Yeah, they are super awesome.
I really enjoy them. They're declining in the wild, like all over their range. One of the things that we've found is that so we're still finding viable nests, so we're still getting viable eggs, but we're only finding wild adults when we go and look. So there's some disconnect between viable eggs and then being juveniles and subadults. So we're only finding old adults. So there's some problem there, and because they live in the rivers, they're always 100% in there. It's a problem with the ecosystem. It's a problem with the water quality, which affects us because, well, we drink that and use that for our everyday lives.
Right.
And so it's something that we need to investigate, and because they're kind of a canary in the coal mine, so they are an indicator of good health and good water quality. We do need to be paying attention to what's going on and then trying to fix it. Because as you said, Duck River and just Middle Tennessee, or just all of Tennessee, is actually the most biodiverse hotspot or landlocked state in the United States.
Yeah, there you go.
So our freshwater diversity is like no other, and some of the species we find here can't be found anywhere else on Earth. So we really need to be paying attention to the ecosystem as a whole and trying to preserve that, because it's just a really important part of Tennessee, as a whole, and well, it pertains to our health too.
Right.
Well, what I think is neat is, we relatively just started learning about the Hellbender. I mean, 40 years ago, before we really started looking into the Hellbender and what was going on in their systems, and so it's kind of like this new, fresh species that hasn't been researched forever and ever, and so that's very interesting to find out some of these indicators that the Hellbender shows us.
So, and another really cool thing about Hellbenders is that they're the only representatives of their family here in North America. Their closest relatives are going to be the Chinese giant salamander and the Japanese giant salamander. So, the Hellbenders are really the only thing that are like Hellbenders, the only species that are like Hellbenders here in North America, and especially in the Southeast and other areas where these animals are present. Like Sherry was saying, it's part of our treasure. It's part of the biodiversity treasure. And there's a lot of research that shows that the more species you have within the ecosystem, more resilient that ecosystem is to change. So the more we grow as a species, as human species, and the more we expand, the more impact we'll have in our ecosystem. So the more biodiversity you have, the more complexity you have, the more resilient your ecosystems are, and the more change they can actually withstand over time.
Wow.
So, they're the only one of their type here in North America, and they contribute to that resiliency, and where they occur, they're really good indicators of water quality. So they live, 40 years, we think?
We're not entirely sure. The record that we have is 30 years, but we all kind of think they can live a lot longer.
So the cool thing is that, if they live for that long, they can tell your story of the watershed and of rivers. So if these animals are supposed to be around for 30 years and they all are disappearing in 10 years, what does that tell us? Right. So that's a really neat. It's a really neat part of Hellbender conservation.
Yeah, that's awesome. Tell us about the young ones that are over here in the tanks.
Okay.
You said it's harder that you weren't seeing those in the water. You're not finding those younger.
Correct.
So where did these come from?
So these are from Middle Tennessee. So we actually went and collected these. These are part of our Head Start program. So what we do is we collect eggs from the wild. We don't take all of them. We just take a small portion of the nest.
Okay.
Females can have up to 500 eggs. So we take them, we bring them here, and we raise them for a few years because there's something that's happening in that 1 to 2 year range where they're just not surviving. So we're head starting them. We're giving a head start. We're getting them past that critical point. We're raising them till, I don't know, we haven't quite started our releases yet. These guys are 4 years old.
Okay.
We hope to start our releases soon. So we're getting them past that critical stage where something's happening, and then we're going to put them back in the wild, and hopefully we can augment the populations, and then we can, just kind of give them a head start while we try and figure out what's going on in the rivers, and also try and fix it and mitigate it so that they can then take over themselves and actually reproduce successfully.
Are there ways to monitor them as far as tagging them and that kind of thing?
Yes. Once we get to that point, we'll do pit tags and probably transponders so we can actually track their or how they move.
Movement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Movement.
Yeah.
Similar to how the fisheries guys do with fish, the pit tagging.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So we kind of hit on what's causing the decline. Anything else you'd want to touch on that? I mean, what?
Well, yeah, one of the things that I always try to talk about when I give presentations or do outreach events is that we have to remember that we're not really, especially when we deal with private lands, we're not disconnected from the entire ecosystem. So all of us are part of a watershed somewhere. So the idea is that it's a big V where all the water that falls within that land ends up in the water system, right, through runoff. So any water that's not absorbed through the soil basically runs across the surface and then gets everything that's available and loose and brings it down to the water. So whatever I do in my property, and if anything in my property ends in the waterway, will impact people downstream. So Hellbender decline is kind of a proxy for what's happening in a watershed level, and it's a combination of everything. It's a combination of the sediment through just erosion on croplands.
Parking
lots and oil and agrochemicals, so it's a combination of everything. So it's important for us to keep in mind that everything that we do in a landscape level ends up in the watershed. And the special issue, the main issue is sedimentation.
Yep.
Would you agree?
Yep.
Where the problem is that not only for Hellbenders, but for a lot of the aquatic wildlife, all the extra sedimentation is a natural process, but the problem is that there's way too much sediment being transported into these waterways, and it basically fills out all those little crevices and little areas that these animals use, and that's one of the biggest issue. Another one is dams, not necessarily the big ones, but the small ones as well. So a lot of folks, I use it to do that too, when you go to the river and you build the dams and you stack all those rocks to create a little swimming pool for to have fun. We also have found dead hellbenders, larvae and whatnot in these areas where there are hellbenders and people are building these dams. So we always try to encourage folks to try to enjoy your natural resources without changing so much of the habitat that's available to wildlife out there as well.
Yeah,
Leave it
believe it or not, Geronimo and I got to go out on the field a few weeks ago.
Well, tell us about that.
I mean, we had a good time. He's cracking up, but we went all over Lawrence and Lewis County and Hickman County and looked in Buffalo River watershed and Swan Creek watershed, and really saw some interesting stuff. We saw some areas that Geronimo thought were just fantastic areas for hellbenders, areas that had not been sampled yet. There were some areas that they had sampled for hellbenders in the past that had shown some improvement, but we saw a lot of concerns too. And so, this episode, hopefully we'll get that information out there about those concerns that we saw. But all in all, I think we had a pretty good time. We had a pretty good hamburger too.
Yeah, that was good. That was a good day.
It was a good day. But I think Geronimo came out of there feeling good about the potential and for projects in that area.
So were you looking for hellbenders? Did you find any? Or are you looking for places to put them back?
So I was personally looking at how I can work with private landowners to improve habitat and water quality for hellbenders. So there is hellbender research has kind of different stages throughout the state and throughout the entire range, really. So you have different partners that are involved with it. So you have lots of the universities and the Nashville Zoo that's doing the research side of things. I did my graduate work with hellbenders as well. So that's when I did a lot of the in the field research and surveys. And with this new actually positioned with the Natural Resources Conservation Service through the through the USDA.
Right.
So we work with private landowners to try to identify areas where we can work together and improve habitat for these animals. So it's a win-win situation for landowners and conservation, where we're tackling some of the natural resources concerns that the landowner may have, but also improve water quality. So when I went out with Clint, we're mainly identifying areas where, the riverbank's failing. There's a lot of source of erosion where we can improve in the area. But previously, we have done a lot of surveys down in the Buffalo River.
Yep.
So the initiative, and we can talk a little bit more about that later.
Sure.
But we have certain, basically, 3 years ago, Hellbender experts got together in Tennessee and wrote a grant, and we asked, where can we work with private landowners and where should we focus our conservation effort? Because the initiative is called the Southeastern Hellbender Conservation Initiative, and it's a partnership between.
There's your
that's
logo.
right.
There's the T-shirt over there.
And that's a T-shirt. Yeah. So it's a partnership between Conservation Management Institute out of Virginia Tech, Defenders of Wildlife, and NRCS. So the idea is, where could we focus our efforts with private landowners, because no one has been doing that before. Most of the Hellbender work would be research and looking at that conservation approach. So we have certain watersheds that we have selected in Tennessee that we would like to work with landowners to focus on habitat quality.
And Clint's been working with landowners for a long time.
Yeah, a long time.
And so anyway, that's awesome that hopefully folks will want to jump in there and do these practices, and we'll hit on some of these practices and what they can do. Clint, tell us how you can get involved with some how landowners can get involved in this work. And
that's kind of we're moving into the part in this interview of how and why is USDA and NRCS involved in this project. Well, NRCS, or the Natural Resource Conservation Service, is a federal agency under the branch of USDA and Congress that is tasked with protecting the nation's soil, air, water, and wildlife. Okay, that's their primary job. They basically have an office in every county in every state and have a professional who deals and works with private landowners. Every 5 years, Congress appropriates a farm bill. There's billions upon billions of dollars in that farm bill. And NRCS's job is to get that money down to the county level, to the local landowner, and offer up conservation-friendly practices that, again, protect soil, air, water, and wildlife. Mm-hmm. So therefore, we're looking at practices like reducing sedimentation, minimizing erosion, and providing critical wildlife habitat. NRCS raised their hand and said, we want to get on board with this. Mm-hmm. So that's how that partnership came to be. And they had some funding that the group applied for and developed this initiative.
Okay. So that's how the Southeastern Hellbender Conservation Initiative was born, I guess. Yeah,
that's pretty much how it was born, through people like Sherry and Geronimo, who understand the need and the value for these species, got together and created this initiative. And so NRCS is the format in which they can fund this initiative, hopefully, and move forward with protecting these resources. It's a win-win for NRCS. They work with these landowners on a daily basis, and they have, let's face it, money talks, okay? And NRCS has the money for these landowners to install and even possibly incentivize them above and beyond installation to do these conservation-friendly practices. So
it's pretty much free for the landowner.
I mean, pretty much.
They help a little bit.
Some of these, based upon the different programs that are out there, some are designed to be cost share practices where the landowner has some skin in the game,
right.
And NRCS funds a major portion of the installation as that practice, as long as it's done according to their specs and standards. And believe me, NRCS has a spec and a standard on everything. The federal government has a spec and a standard on how to go to the restroom, I think. But besides that, they lay it out, and they've had some professional engineers and professional biologists and agronomists lay these practices out to, again, protect soil, air, water, and wildlife.
And those landowners the majority of the land is private land.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
that's what's touching the water, not so much public land that we can. have direct access.
95% of Tennessee is privately owned.
Between 90 and 95% of the land mass in the state of Tennessee is privately owned land. If we cannot reach those people, we are not doing the best job that we can do.
And that's one of the things that I always say is the private landowners are the true stewards of the land. So they are we want to work with them because if it's their land and they are the ones that are responsible for keeping it healthy for future generations. And one really cool thing about this is that it shows the importance of partnership is that, without us actually having the habitat for these animals and having clean water for these animals and decreasing sedimentation and all of that, none of these animals can actually get released.
Yep.
And as far as I know, they are pretty genetically unique.
They are.
Some of the populations, right?
Yep. Some of what we do at the zoo is we go out in the field and we look for hellbenders and see where they are. So when we do find them, we do disease sampling and then we do DNA sampling. So what we found with our DNA so far is that the Tennessee River drainage seems to be a little bit more unique. I don't want to talk about Paul's stuff. Yeah. They are special. So they are more of the southern range. So they might be more important genetically as our climate warms up. They're a little bit more used to being in warmer waters than some of the northern.
Yeah, what's really cool is by protecting this species, you're improving the water quality and the water habitat for many other species that, say, a normal landowner might be more interested in, like bluegill, bass, crappie, catfish,
trout.
All those things are being advanced or protected with these practices that we're talking about. And any landowner can come into a USDA office and sign up or ask for help. If you think you have issues with erosion or sedimentation or lack of good wildlife habitat or grazing or haying or crop issues.
Or if you just want to improve your production, if you just want to improve your operation.
Yeah, if you want to maximize production, NRCS can help you out. And myself, the other private lands biologists that are out there
across the state,
work in conjunction, right.
And I think we have some examples of practices that we cover.
So, starting off, one of the things that Geronimo and I were looking at when we were out there is the status of the channel bed. What does it look like? NRCS can help with stabilizing channel beds in streams, small streams. They can also look at putting in-stream structures in, like we call them J-hooks, which are rip-rap structures that actually can change the flow of the current and move that water away from a sensitive area.
Gotcha.
In this process, when we work on these things, we work with a lot of livestock producers. So livestock fencing, exclusion fencing of cows on streams and creeks and ponds and lakes, is important. NRCS cost shares on that. And then, in return, we're going to provide you an alternative watering system that is designed to withstand a lot of animals. It has a heavy use protection around it.
Right.
Stream crossings are always important. It seems like in the bottom of every ditch or every hollow, there's a stream somewhere in Tennessee. Okay, lots of springs and lots of water movement. In order to get from one part of your property to the other, sometimes it's important to harden up those stream crossings to minimize erosion and protect some of the species downstream.
Do you bridge across them too in some cases? No.
Well, it just depends.
Tractors and equipment going through, and
that's where the NRCS engineers come into play.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so there's engineers.
I don't even say anything about that. I'm like, engineers, help.
Yep. So stream crossings are important.
Right.
The big one, we looked a lot at was stream bank and shoreline protection. We have almost 60 plus inches of rainfall a year here in Tennessee. We're 10 inches away from being considered a temperate rainforest. Guess what? With all these hills and hollers, that water has to go somewhere. And it goes down, and it speeds up and starts eating away at banks. So
some of our landowners, some of our clients, they're losing, multiple feet of croppable land or production every year. And we're talking about 5-10 feet.
We've had several 500-year events in the past 2 years.
right.
Exactly.
You know? So those events really create damage, and armoring those stream banks, sloping them back on a 2-to-1, and putting riprap in and protecting them to keep all of that soil that would have been in the river on dry land.
Right.
You know, those are all important. Erosion issues with crop fields are definitely something NRCS is going to look at. Fixing those, creating grass waterways, keeping all that good soil on the crop field for the farmer, so he can maximize his production and minimize his chemical runoffs too. And then, you know, stabilizing with heavy use areas, controlling animal movements. All these are different practices that, you know, getting those cows off the stream and protecting the areas where they are. You've seen it in the winter. You're driving by and they're feeding round bells right off the creek, and it's just a huge, soupy, muddy mess.
Right.
Let's clean that up. Let's get them away from there. Let's give them a hardened area where we can minimize erosion. But there's so many practices, and it's so easy for a landowner, whether you've got 2 acres or 2,000 acres, it doesn't matter. If you're interested in protecting this species and other wildlife species, or being conservation friendly with what you do on your land, NRCS and TWRA are a great outreach to reach out to and ask them.
That's what I was going to say, the next point. I mean, there's a lot of people out there watching, a lot of people listening. How would someone contact you to do this?
The best way is, in each county, you can either go to your local soil conservation district office or NRCS office and reach out to your district conservationist or your soil conservationist, and they can put you in touch with myself or Geronimo.
Okay.
Yep.
Awesome. Do you have anything else you want to add? We got a couple minutes, or about a minute left.
So I work at the NRCS office out of the Knoxville office, the area office, but any NRCS office that you contact, or TWRA or whoever you contact, I'm sure that will trickle down with the Hellbender initiative. We'll be able to get someone to visit with you and go from there.
You bet.
Awesome.
Yep.
If you want to come see these creatures, these amazing creatures, come see Sherry. Maybe she could meet you and set up a tour or something, but come see them in the zoo. They're pretty cool. What building are they in?
They're in the Unseen World.
Unseen World, okay.
Yep.
Awesome. So, and we got the model here.
Are you going to kiss one on camera, Geronimo?
I love these things, man.
I'm glad that one wasn't in the bucket. All right. Well, we appreciate everybody tuning in. Thank you guys for pulling this together. This is a great project that people need to know about, and protect your streams, protect the habitat for these guys, control the runoff and things like that. Contact them and see how you can help. It's an amazing project, and like they said, if this thing's healthy, their streams are healthy. So
Got that right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thank y'all for tuning in. Keep coming back. Visit tnwildlife.org if you want to find out all about Tennessee wildlife, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in. Stay connected with TWRA by visiting our website at tnwildlife.org and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Hey, it's all about Tennessee wildlife. It's what we do. Tennessee Wildcast will be on the air again next week. We'll see you then.